Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And perhaps there is not a better time than to have this guest with me, James Corbett. I really don't need to give him much of an introduction. Everybody who's in my audience knows who Corbett is. CorbettReport.com is the website. And with all the madness in the world, especially on this subject of bioengineered viruses and doomsday prophecies and martial law takeovers, there really is nobody better to have on than somebody who's done this for well over a decade and given this subject the attention it deserves. Plus, we get an overseas perspective that we may not get in other places. So, James, thank you so much for joining me. And how are things over in Japan?
Not bad. You see, it's one of those things where if you look out the window and observe the actual reality around you, you would be forgiven for thinking that nothing at all is happening. But, of course, things are happening, at least on an administrative level. As you may have heard, the Japanese government took the extraordinary measure recently of shutting down all schools here for the month of March. Mm-hmm. And that may just be the beginning. And it may be a complete and total distraction, as some people are saying, from the real political situation here. So like everything else surrounding this current freakout, everything is in question. All of the numbers are fake and phony, and we're being told 18,000 different contradictory things. Again, I'm just looking at the reality that I observe out my window, and I don't see anything. I'm not feeling sick yet. And personally, as a middle-aged man with no pre-existing medical condition, and I'm not a smoker, I'm not overly worried about this from a health perspective. I am very worried about all of this from other perspectives, however.
Thank you very much, because I think that's definitely the way to go. And you did a piece, I believe it was all the way back in 2014, on the movie Contagion. Now, this is far from the first Hollywood piece that really starts with one of these outbreaks, right? These bioengineered weapons that takes out a large swath of the populace. The first one that I remember as a child that really gripped me was Stephen King's The Stand. The end of the world is just the beginning. And in the opening scene of that, it is basically an accident at a U.S. biomedical lab where a man escapes the facility after being exposed and brings his wife and daughter who are on the base out into the world. And the opening of that series, the first couple, is basically a virus like this, which is flu-like, that takes out 99.9% of the population. I think that it is safe to say that's not going to be the case with this. However, from what we've seen in just in the videos that have leaked out of China, it seems other boxes are being checked. And this is what you've always warned about. Real or not, this really could be a globalist wet dream. Why?
All right. First, let's underline a few of the things that you said there, because yes, we've certainly seen an awful lot of programming around the idea of contagion and outbreak and 28 days and all of this kind of stuff, preparing people for some sort of zombie flu, whatever, apocalypse. And perhaps there is something to that. There are pandemic diseases that have spread throughout human history and can take great tolls on the population from the Black Plague onwards. We have in our human history, we have real examples of things like this that have caused great harm to a lot of people. So it is something, at least it's not outside of the realm of possibility to be worried about. And of course, we can go back to the Spanish flu a century ago that people are suddenly remembering, called the Spanish flu, but really perhaps it should be called the American flu, because a lot of research points back to the fact that that really started with the forced immunizations that were being given to the troops that were being sent over to World War I on American bases before they were shipped over. And then it spread there, and then it ultimately made its way around the world. There's a lot of research along those lines, which would show that that pandemic is not what we were told it was. But all that being said, yes, whatever is happening right now, and this is my point, I'm certainly not a medical professional. And yes, please be skeptical of medical professionals and experts who are using the argument from authority, fallacious argument to say, I know what I'm talking about. Of course not. But just because the argument from authority is a logically fallacious way of arguing a point, it doesn't mean you know what's going on. And you'll notice that people who say, I don't trust the experts, will always say, whenever there's a Harvard study or whatever that supports what they believe, well, then they'll cite that Harvard study. See, even Harvard says it. But if they say something contrary, well, it's Harvard, of course. They're funded by the globalists. I mean, you know how that game works.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is I don't know. I don't know what's going on. And chances are neither do you. And I don't just mean you, Jason. I mean whoever's watching this.
And you know what? That's why I've had so many people on. And like this perspective is probably going to be the most level-headed. But, I've also had Shepard Ambellis on. And if you've been following IntelliHub, he's been warning about these things for now. Not to cut you off, but where do we get, now I'm sure you're about to go over those examples, where do we start to get concerned, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm heading into. Because bioweapon, natural, it's going to kill us all. It's being overhyped. Whatever the case may be on that spectrum, it doesn't matter ultimately with regards to the effects that we know are coming as a result of this. The first order of which, of course, are the economic effects, which are already now baked into the cake, even if every case of coronavirus, assuming it even exists, there are the people who say it doesn't even exist, whatever. If every case of this suddenly went away tomorrow, the economic effects of this would already be baked into the cake, given the incredible disruption we've seen to the supply chain, the global just-in-time supply chain that the global economy is based on these days, has already been so significantly disrupted that economic effects from this will be echoing out for months and months from now. And as things progress, if they continue to get worse, could be years-long economic crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in our generation. So that is a first order effect that we are going to see, regardless of anything else that's happening right now. That's something that should be concerning because, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers will be informed about, the economy as it exists right now is a Ponzi scheme that is essentially a ticking time bomb. Are we seeing the controlled demolition of that Ponzi scheme right now in order to bring in the next level of that Ponzi scheme? I think that's certainly a possibility. It's something I've been talking about and writing about for a decade now. So it's something I definitely have my eyes on. And we see various aspects of that agenda being pumped already. I mean, even as some people have pointed out, the absurdity of cash, you have to physically handle that with your hands and you can get coronavirus from it. I mean,
the World Health Organization
going,
is now
right?
putting that propaganda directly out. It was one thing I was going to discuss with you because let's talk about those economic effects right now that are really right in our face. Now, I was coming back from my DC trip, and I had already seen runs on shelves. Now, this was on Wednesday when I was there, and that kind of surprised me. So on Thursday, on my ride back, I said, look, guys, here's the bare minimum at this point. I didn't even think it was going to make it to the United States. It's pretty clear that's about to happen. I go, panic will ensue no matter what. Go buy a couple $100 worth of canned goods. It won't hurt no matter what happens. I go, what happens? You got 2.5 years. I'm not telling you to bug out. I'm telling you, go get that before the price gouging begins and the panic buying begins. Both have now happened. It is absolutely 100% official that if you look at this now, Amazon has already had to remove 1 million products. This is within 2 days of that. Think about how huge that's going to happen economically. And now, despite the fact the Fed cut the rates by 0.5 point for the first time in 10 years based on nothing, when they were already at a very low interest rate because of this administration, trying to save that yesterday, we saw a 700-point plunge, and I can only expect more. The question is, now, James, have we now moved to the slave labor? Because if these NASA readings are correct, if you look at January 1st through the 20th, you can clearly see that China is in full effect, and they're obviously producing things. February 10th to the 25th, they are obviously not. To have this go out literally 4 days ago for the first time, saying that they are now taking prisoners and putting them in the Nike factories and putting them in the Apple factories. Look, it should already be uncomfortable that most of our goods are made by semi-slave labor. This is full force, boots to the neck, slave labor. Am I wrong here? Are you seeing the same thing that I am? How do you feel? Because I've talked to some people now in the United States that do work with those that go back and forth to China, and they'll admit, when they first start seeing news here, they at first think it was propaganda against the party, but they begin to see things. And it was a lot of people's theory that this, no matter how serious it was going to be used to round up those who dared be dissident for the Hong Kong protests. I mean, am I a wild conspiracy theorist for putting these puzzle pieces together, or do you think I'm on the mark?
Maybe you're a wild conspiracy realist. Let's put it this way. We should be skeptical of reports that are coming out about the evil Chinese because of the State Department propaganda and wrangling, and we know that they lie and highlight certain things. But that being said, certainly the Chinese Communist Party is not manna from heaven. They're not wonderful saviors of humanity. They're not going to be the people to save us from the American empire or whatever narrative is being crafted in certain parts of the so-called independent media. And we should absolutely understand that this crisis, any crisis really, but certainly this crisis, is carte blanche for the CCP to tighten their grip around the necks of the Chinese people even more tightly than before, if that can be imagined. I just wrote an article that I hope people in your audience will go and check out on this, called Coronavirus, the Cures Will Be Worse Than the Disease, where I highlight the fact that China is absolutely already using all of their technocratic gadgetry to enact these incredible quarantines, the likes of which have literally never been seen in human history before. How do they get around? How do they do this? Well, it is through this the combination of all the technocratic technological gadgets that they've accumulated in their police state arsenal over the past decade or two, including, I'm sure we've all seen the footage now of the drones going around chiding people. You're not wearing your mask. You shouldn't be out right now, that kind of thing. But much more creepily, the payment apps that everyone in China uses now, it's becoming a cashless society one way or another, even though cash technically exists. Everyone's using these payment apps that are now giving these color-coded badges based on your payment history and your travel history, which of course they know because you take your little fondle slab around everywhere, and they can color code you so that people will know how likely you are to be infected or a potential carrier and all of this stuff. I mean, it's just crazy nightmare stuff that a decade ago even would have blown people's minds. But now it's like, oh, of course they're doing that.
And unfortunately, most people are apathetic to it, James. This is why we warned about this social credit score. Using this social credit score that has been openly implemented there, they know who the dissidents are no matter what. Not being able to get information out of China so readily has been a detriment to us all. I mean, I saw somebody, and I don't know how correct it is, but I would assume it's pretty correct. If you did everything that Greta Thunberg had said, you'd go down maybe 6-7% of pollution and carbon dioxide, all that, okay? That's about 27% in the world that happened in a month. That should alarm people on a human level, on a natural level. I've been watching the Last Messages videos. I tell people, hey, you got to use your discernment. But let's start talking about what's happening in the States, because I know that you have a national emergency, but it's rolling out very slowly here, where states are declaring national emergencies. And what I've seen now is alarming, that Iran is temporarily freeing 54,000 prisoners to help combat this. Obviously, their inner circle seems to be suffering. I'm not sure what to believe there, because how can we believe anything in the media? But it is something we have to look at. This video coming out of Florida of a long convoy of military gear that coincides with the National Guard just happening to be in Florida for an event where they just declared a national health emergency. And this isn't even the most frightening convoy by far. And by the way, yes, Apache helicopters doing drills in California, where we have another convoy, which is a couple miles long of the same exact thing. Now, what really worries me about all of this is the fact, and this is that National Guard drill, is this video, James. And I'm not sure you've seen this yet, but these were the unconventional military exercises that they allowed to be filmed in North Carolina that took place, guess when? The 25th, the 26th, the same time you saw those convoys. So, unfortunately, folks, the enemy are not brown people. They're not the Taliban. They're not Al-Qaeda. Those are guns on SUVs that have American citizens on them. There are the dissidents on the back of red trucks. There they are being rounded up by the military. This is the military going through residential areas, firing blanks, I would assume, but letting off actual live explosives. You'll see one go off in the background right there. Then going over large parking areas where you would see things like Costco, Walmart, etc., and having what appear to be live fire exercises there as well. We talked about this for 20 years. I don't know who to trust, and I certainly don't trust this administration. With them announcing now a combat drawdown conveniently in Afghanistan, where do those troops go? I mean, do they get set up for what's with Iran, or do they actually come home if these crises break out everywhere? We already have National Guard emergencies. We already have drills going on. How concerned should we be in the United States?
Well, first of all, I think I'll believe the troop drawdown in Afghanistan when we actually see it. And you're probably right. Yes, they'll get shuffled around in the Middle East, as we saw with the troop pullout in Syria. But of course, they're all staying in Iraq in order to continue the ever-going, never-ending American presence there. But on the point of military involvement in whatever next stage of this crisis may be, you're exactly right. So let's continue going through that checklist of globalist agenda items. We talked about economics. There's, of course, just the plain old monetary incentive and the billions upon billions upon billions of dollars that will be funneled to vaccine manufacturers as a result of this crisis, or perceived crisis anyway. And then the potential second order health effects. I'm actually more scared of whatever forced coronavirus vaccination they're going to try to force on the population a year from now, more so than the disease itself. But let's think about this. Yes, medical martial law. This is something that I've talked about for over a decade now, and has been prepped at least for 2 decades, going back to the Model State Health Emergency Powers Act, or is it the Modern Health State Emergency Powers Act? Look it up. I put it in my article. That was pimped around in 2001 in the wake of 9/11 and potential bioterrorism. Well, we're going to need some new laws on the book that may kind of, upend the Constitution a little bit, only in the crisis, and only to deal with a medical crisis like, the spread of some sort of contagious virus. And what does that do? Well, of course, it allows for mandatory incarceration, known as quarantining, and it allows for mandatory and forced vaccinations of the population and other things that would be unthinkable if it wasn't for a perceived threat to the community. And that's exactly the most worrying part of this, is that, as I pointed out before, the same people in the independent media who are propounding that, the Chinese or the Russians or whoever are the saviors and they're the good guys and they're fighting against the evil empire or whatever it is, are the same ones that are saying, look, isn't it awesome China has contained their outbreak with all of this police state gadgetry and the crackdown and medical martial law and quarantining and welding people into their homes. Yay, go Chinese. Well, guess what? That is coming. That's coming for you pretty soon if things continue on this trajectory. So be careful what you wish for. But yes, people, exactly as you used to hear this a decade ago, people will be clamoring for martial law when it actually arrives. And you might have scoffed at that a decade ago. No one's actually going to want that. Oh yeah, there are people who are going to want these things to happen because the government will save us. And so at least the people in the audience who at this precise moment have at least a little bit of common sense to understand that perhaps martial law is not the way to go, please maintain that, no matter what kind of fear they try to pump into you to make you desire the government to come in and save you from the problem that they have created.
And soldiers doing these drills. I mean, most of you guys are National Guard or military men that love your wives, your kids, your mothers, your fathers. I've already told people they're being very honest when they're going to tell you that the first outbreaks are in old folks' homes and health facilities. That's real. Okay, right now this New York City lawyer who's in severe condition, I mean, they're downplaying. There's already a video of somebody dropping dead in Chinatown. I haven't verified it yet, and I don't want to put it there, but it is reminiscent of those videos we've seen supposedly coming out of Wuhan. People are going to start freaking out. There's no way right now that the 9 deaths they're telling you about in Washington are the only ones. And again, there are 300 plus million people, probably closer to 400 million people in this country. We have to put it into perspective. No matter what this is, But how soon until the panic, James? I believe by the end of the week, they'll say it's in every state, and at least in the United States,
Yeah.
the death toll will be over 100. I don't think we know what that makes the market look like at all. We've never had it here in the number one Western power ever, America. We're fucking America. Don't you know? We do everything right, and everybody that's ever crossed us ate shit and died. You understand? You understand, son? So,
It sounds like you've been practicing your Texan accent for some reason, Jason.
But that's not even. Listen,
any recent run-ins I should know about?
Did you see that? Did you? We can talk about that some other time, Mr. Corbett. But that's another thing. You have to hold people accountable. That man has a large audience, and right now should be the time he's digging in hard on this. And I don't know that he is. You're wasting your time at CPAC, man. Like, well, when I was there, I was just there for the action for Assange. I decided to stay when fate beheld me this opportunity, to go and talk about the real First Amendment and what's happening there with Assange and the extradition and the fact that's Grenell and, this administration who's made plenty of mistakes and may make more. And this would be the most tragic one of all. You got to hold these people accountable because, James, what we're getting on television, we don't know. They could be downplaying it. They could be upplaying it. Yeah. They're certainly not promoting any kind of health solution. In fact, no, I reposted yesterday, I retweeted somebody who said that they're having success and they were showing these different studies, and they were peer-reviewed studies. I was going, you get the PDF files, that what it seems to be working on some of these people in China are vitamin C injections. So rather than endorsing it, I said, Burmese Brigade, what's your thoughts? I want to get people's thoughts. Like, tell me, what do you think? Is this bullshit? Is this 5G and chemtrails? Is this bioweapon umbrella corporation nonsense? What is this? You know what I mean? Because we got a whole swath of that, right? We've been talking about Bill Gates for years. We could talk about the science fiction. We could talk about Event 201. We can talk about the actual study that says, there's HIV receptors and SARS receptors on these things, right? So, there's just this swath of information that's all there. We don't know.
Yeah.
So who do we trust? Where is the discernment? And what information are you finding the most compelling? And what are you warning people against buying into?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not going to tell people who to trust. Obviously, you have to make that decision for yourself. So whatever rubric you use to decide you can trust me to tell you who to trust is the same rubric you can use to decide who to trust for yourself. But let's just throw in another perspective to this, because I don't know, and I'm not making any claims, but there are the people who say that this entire pandemic crisis is all hype and that there's nothing really happening. And that might sound outlandish until you look at actual specific examples like the 2009 swine flu. Millions of people were diagnosed with at least probable swine flu at that time. And then it quietly came out later, well, actually, we stopped testing for presence of the virus a long time ago. And so all of those were just kind of estimates that we based on symptoms. And when you look at what's happening right now with this novel coronavirus, at least in China, diagnosing via symptoms via CT scan, they're not doing nucleic acid tests. There's no actual identification of any sort of RNA or anything that's going on right now. So there is at least room for healthy skepticism about what is and isn't happening. But having said that, again, regardless of this, let's get down to the solutions. And there's a couple of different ways to approach this. One, we talked about the economics, and you're exactly right. Hoarding is starting. And here's the thing about hoarding. It doesn't matter why it's happening. It's happening. So you are either prepared for it or you are not. And you want to be prepared for it. So you're going to hear a lot of people saying, we're the CDC and we're telling you not to stock up on supplies. Don't do that kind of preparing stuff. You don't want to be a prepper, do you? Well, the point, as you put it exactly, is you should be prepared for this anyway. You should have stocks and supplies so that you can ride out whatever kind of disruption to the global supply chain happens, coronavirus or otherwise. So you should already be prepared for this. If you are not, at least use this as the kick in the butt to get going on that. And buy supplies and things that you will use anyway, eventually down the line. right? It's win-win. What it could possibly be bad about that? And if you don't, then you're going to get left out on it. And secondarily, if you are concerned about your health, yeah, you should generally be concerned about your health at all times, regardless of whatever novel virus is spreading or not. And the best thing that you can do personally to take your own health into your own hands is to make sure you have a healthy immune system. And again, I'm not going to tell people, you use this and don't use this and whatever. Again, you can use your judgment on that. You know what works for your body, and you, I'm sure, have been experimenting your whole life on what things make you healthy and what things don't. But think about that. Boost your immune system, because if there really is some novel virus that's going to go pandemic or endemic and everyone's going to get it at some point, well, then you're not going to ride this out. You're not going to beat it. So you might as well have a strong immune system that will be able to fight this off. And that is the best thing that you can be doing for yourself right now. Again, regardless of whether any of this is real or not, it doesn't hurt to have a strong and healthy immune system. It doesn't hurt to have stocks and supplies ready, because hoarding is happening, as you say, and it's only going to get worse from here.
And if there's anything positive about this, it doesn't seem to be going after children. There haven't been a lot of children deaths. And the other thing is, it looks like men. It looks vastly men. We're seeing that in the United States. I think it's pretty prevalent in the videos. So, now's the time, guys. Get some vitamins in there. Do the jumping jacks in the morning. It's not going to hurt you anyway. But don't succumb to the fear either. I think, again, the fear, the response, forced medication, yeah, those are very, very scary things. And we've got to fight tooth and nail against them. Even if this somehow, that would be massive, if somehow it took out 10% of the population, roughly 800 million people globally. Let's say 5%, right? Let's say 400 million. That would be tragic, no doubt about it. That still isn't worth giving over your health to the U.S. government or the Chinese government or any of these, because we don't know where this goes down the line. So I know I only got you for a few more minutes. What are the main things that maybe we didn't focus on that we should be?
Well, I just did a pretty lengthy video going over the idea of the numbers that are being thrown around about infections and deaths. And I think we can all agree that we can't trust the official numbers that are being thrown around. Even if you are inclined to trust the health authorities know what they're talking about and they're testing everyone and all of this. I mean, of course, we know that the number of people who are affected by this is going to be an estimate at any given time. Not everyone in the world has been tested. We don't really know. So you should have that kind of skepticism. But as I also point out in that video, there are many reasons to be skeptical about the different tests that are being performed in different countries to clinically diagnose, like in China, where they're looking at CT scans to look at symptoms and diagnosing from that. So these numbers that are being thrown around are not worth anything. And I see even people in the independent media who are saying, you can't trust any of the numbers, and then literally 1 minute later saying, but the numbers of infections are going down in China, so it must be working. I've literally heard that happening. So again, people have to maintain a bit of consistency here. And I'm going to try to remain as level-headed as I can for as long as I can. But again, psychology of the crowds, when everybody's freaking out and everyone's panicking and everyone's hoarding and all of this is happening, then regardless of whether it's real or fake or manufactured or natural or whatever it is, it's going to start affecting you. So let's get down to the brass tacks and think about what really matters here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, school closures in Japan were probably not far off in the United States. We've never seen anything like that. James Corbett, everybody. CorbettReport.com is the website. We got to get together more often. I know you're a super busy guy. Tell people when your videos do drop so they can see them all the time. You drop, 2 or 3 a week, do you not?
Sometimes even 4 or 5, but yeah, on a regular basis. And the best place, of course, as you got there on the screen, CorbettReport.com. Don't go to GooTube. Don't satisfy their clickbait tendencies. Go to my website, and I have lots of different ways to, including hosting on my own site and other social medias that are preferable to this highly censored platform. Where are we even allowed to say? I'm sorry, did I say coronavirus? I think this.
I'm still not allowed to say Erica Caramello Bar. Right? I can't say the man's name. Neither can Rand Paul or Louis Gohmert. I got 1,000, I think 1,060 videos on this channel. There's one that's locked globally. And it's actually on the congressional floor by a sitting congressman by saying Erica Caramello Bar's real name. It's unbelievable. But that's it. I mean, that's the world we live in, dude. And I know that you're a partner in this. We can look at each other and just look and say, what the fuck happened? And I'll tell you, we got lazy. as a people. We got really apathetic, and now's the time to turn it on, guys. Talk to your friends and family. Tell them to have a plan. If they're in a big city, maybe now's the time to, go upstate. And if you've got a loved one in one of these homes, I'm telling you now, if you love your dad and he's in one of these homes, they get quarantined. That's it. Either they come out or they don't. If they're at home, there might be a different outcome. You've got to understand that. So make some really good decisions. Thank you, James. I'm going to take these super chats on the other side. I really appreciate it, brother. You have a good night.
Thank you. Take care.
You got it. So there he is, James Corbett. Guys, Corbett's number one, obviously. I'm going to go through all the super chats I got. Here we go. One of them says, what happens when this leaves in a couple weeks? I hope, or 2 months. I hope it does. But there are some people saying it could come back in cycles over the next 3 to 5 years. That's mainline or be a seasonal thing. There are medical textbooks from the 80s that state the coronavirus is part of a virus family as the corona cold. My brother is a nurse working ICU. Yes, this is the novel coronavirus or COVID-19. And no one's saying it's the same as the same thing that was sprayed down with Lysol, et cetera, et cetera. Hi, Jason and James, longtime fan of both of you. Jason points out who these people are. Jason find out what they are doing. But in all the madness, the sake of power is too simple. All right, so those are all the super chats. Guys, thumbs this video up, subscribe and share. Maybe we'll hit 40,000 eventually. Probably not. We do it 3 to 7 times a day on various issues. I'm trying not to make my channel just about the coronavirus, but obviously this is the most important thing of the day. We're doing 5 exclusives at least a week over on Rockfin. I'll be putting up a video later tonight over there as well. And guys, I still got to pay my bills. $5, $10, $15 if you got it. Hey, cash might be worthless in a little while. I doubt it, but I still got to write that check. So if you like independent media, if you like information like the stuff I just gave you with James Corbett, please consider donating. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you guys all on the flip side.